and welcome back to the Hardware News Recap for the week. In this one, we'll be talking about a strange lawsuit against Valve. Also, Microsoft being charged with breaching antitrust rules. Microsoft automatically uploading your files to the internet. They're different stories. 4070 Ti Supers, potentially it looks like getting the AD102 die. And a couple others like NVIDIA's market cap reduction of $500 billion in a couple days. And they're still like the top 3 or 4 companies in the world by market cap. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly's Aeronaut and Hydronaut thermal pastes. Aeronaut is Thermal Grizzly's entry-level thermal solution, marketed as resistant to curing and for long-term endurance. Hydronaut is Thermal Grizzly's next step up, targeted for overclocking and higher performance applications. We've used Hydronaut on a lot of our systems internally over the years. You can learn more at the link in the description below. All right, first one is Valve being sued for 656 million British pounds, or about 832 million US dollars. This is in the UK, obviously, and it's based on claims that Valve is, quote, rigging the market and taking advantage of UK gamers, end quote. This collective action claim was put forth by a digital rights campaigner named Vicky Shotbolt, and it is being brought forth by the legal firm Milberg London LLP. The lawsuit claims that Valve has been, quote, shutting out its competition, and the BBC reports that the lawsuit, quote, says Valve forces game publishers to sign up to so-called price parity obligations, preventing titles from being sold at cheaper prices on rival platforms. Shotbolt claims that this allowed Valve to charge an excessive commission of up to 30%, also a quote. According to Shotbolt and the law firm, Valve has been in breach of UK competition law for over 6 years. With the lawsuit, she aims, quote, to stop this unlawful conduct and help people get back what they are owed, end quote. Now, at the core of this, from what we understand, it looks like this is based on maybe just an incorrect understanding of how things work on Steam. So, this comes down to the price floor for games that are sold off-platform. It's kind of what the claim is about, saying that Valve is setting the price limit and is also taking what they call an excessive commission. We'll talk about that in a second. Following the lawsuit, game developer Jason Thor Hall and streamer, maybe better known as Pirate Software, replied and came to Valve's sort of defense, stating, quote, Steam's pricing restriction is only for Steam key pricing off-platform, meaning you cannot use Steam as a distribution hub and sell Steam keys off-platform for cheaper. This prevents Valve from getting ripped off and is absolutely fine. They do not dictate the lowest price your game can be sold for unless you are using Steam keys, end quote. Steam keys is a free Valve solution. It's a service that Valve provides to Steam developers as single-use codes that they can give people like beta testers or press. As for the 30% commission, Hall, aka Pirate Software, stated, quote, the Steam 30% cut is not actually 30%. It's 30% for all sales made on the Steam platform. If you sell Steam keys, Valve takes a 0% cut of that transaction. They also don't charge for generating Steam keys. The claim that the 30% is egregious is also a subjective opinion, as many developers, myself included, find that the value brought by Steam is well worth it. Whether or not 30% is too high is up for debate, as stated by Pirate Software. We're not game developers, but as YouTubers, the most I can say is, wow, 30% would be awesome. That would leave 70% for the one actually like making the thing. That'd be pretty cool. So I'm just saying, like, we'd be okay with it. But, you know, it's a different industry. There's different costs involved, whatever. Anyway, aside from the Epic Games Store, which collects 12% cut and uses that as a major marketing point, the majority of competitors we're aware of charge 30%. To the best of our understanding, this includes GOG, the Microsoft Store, the PlayStation Store, Xbox Game Store, Nintendo eShop, Apple's App Store, famously Apple's App Store actually, and Google's Play Store. Some developers have special deals with the store host. That's kind of a different thing though, that's arranged privately. Overall, it seems like this lawsuit might be founded on maybe an inadequate understanding of how the feature functions. All right, next one. In other legal news, the European Commission has charged Microsoft with breaching EU antitrust rules for bundling Microsoft Teams with its Office 365 and Microsoft 365 subscriptions. The European Commission raised concerns that this maneuver stifles competition, writing in the press release, quote, "The Commission is concerned that since at least April 2019, Microsoft has been tying Teams with its core software as a service productivity applications, thereby restricting competition on the market for communication and collaboration products and defending its market position in productivity software and its suite-centric model from competing suppliers of individual software. In particular, the Commission is concerned that Microsoft may have granted Teams a distribution advantage by not giving customers the choice whether or not to acquire access to Teams when they subscribe to their software as a service productivity applications. This advantage may have been further exacerbated by interoperability limitations between Teams' competitors and Microsoft's offerings. The conduct may have prevented Teams' rivals from competing and in turn innovating to the detriment of customers of the European Economic Area," end quote. In particular, the Commission states that Microsoft's actions infringe on Article 102 of the Treaty of the Functioning European Union, which the Commission says, quote, "prohibits the abuse of a dominant market position." It's kind of anti-monopoly stuff. The European Commission began its investigation to Microsoft July 27th, 2023 for this particular issue. That was after receiving a complaint from Microsoft's rival, Slack, and AlphaView GmbH. The EU Executive Vice President in charge of the Commission said that, quote, "We are concerned that Microsoft may be giving its own communication product Teams an undue advantage over competitors." Microsoft, like most of its large competitors, is no stranger to European Union antitrust charges. In 2004, the company was fined 497 million euros and was required to release a version of Windows without Windows Media Player. In 2008, the company was fined 899 million euros for not complying with a 2004 ruling regarding the sharing of information. In 2013, the European Union fined Microsoft 561 million euros for failing to give Windows users a choice of web browsers. But that's enough of Microsoft. So speaking of Microsoft, this time with OneDrive. Following its recent massive controversy around the recall service, which aims to save screenshots regularly of the desktop for future LLM training and other AI use cases, Microsoft is aiming to solidify concerns about its platform and push people away as rapidly as possible by defaulting to automatic uploads of your files to OneDrive. Great. It's opt-out, not opt-in. Before we get into this story, just a public service announcement. So we install Windows without web-connected accounts for every machine in the office. That's test benches and workstations alike. There are a lot of good reasons for this. This is one of them, because if you have no web-connected Microsoft account attached to your OS, then it cannot automatically enable this OneDrive uploading feature, whatever privacy concern, future breach in waiting, whatever you want to call it. If you also want to install Windows with local-only accounts, like we do, we recommend it, you can do so by, when you get to the Windows install prompt, you hit Shift F10 when it starts asking you for an account or to create one. That will pop up command prompt, and then you type in OOBE /bypass NRO. We'll put that on the screen. OOBE, I think, stands for out-of-box experience, and then the bypass will bypass an account requirement you'll have to restart. It will remember that when you boot back into the installer, then you can make a local-only account. And if for some reason that doesn't work, you can Google OOBE bypass, and there'll be a million articles about how to do it. So, all right, on to the story. Microsoft's newest change enables opt-out, meaning on by default, automatic uploads to its OneDrive storage service. Windows will now upload the libraries folders to OneDrive, which includes pictures, documents, videos, and music. This story originally kind of got popular from Reddit posts asking about the behavior. We saw it run on Tom's Hardware and a couple other places. For security reasons, primarily so you don't have backups floating around without your knowledge of it, we'd recommend turning the feature off unless you intend to use it and to keep track of it. Anytime you're using a cloud storage service, whether that's something like Adobe Cloud or Microsoft or whatever it may be, we'd recommend only using those if you're going to keep track of them. Because if you don't, and there's an account breach that you're unaware of, then whatever documents you have there, tax files, whatever it may be, social security number, which you shouldn't really be storing there anyway, but people definitely do it, that obviously becomes a concern. So we just recommend turning it off unless you're going to use it. All right, next one. 4070 Ti Super GPUs coming based on AD102, the die that's used for the RTX 4090. So this is according to leaks by MSI and later Colorful. where future manufacturing runs of the 4070 Ti Super GPUs will apparently be based on AD102, and these will be cut-down variants of the die that is used for the RTX 4090, which is kind of crazy because that is a gigantic die. Typically, manufacturers like NVIDIA, AMD, Intel will use their defect silicon and then fuse off non-defective functionality that is congruent with the higher-end product that maybe wasn't a defect in manufacturing. They'll fuse it off, knock it down to a lower SKU, and that allows the manufacturer to reclaim the die if it wouldn't pass qualification for the full fat die 4090. MSI revealed to benchlife.info that its upcoming 4070 Ti Super Ventus 3X Black OC, which probably should get some kind of award for amount of words in a product title, it'll use a GPU that's codenamed AD102-175. The RTX 4090, on the other hand, debuted with AD102-300 chips, and a story on video cards claims that it will be AD102-225, not AD102-175. In either case, the part that's important is the move to AD102. The RTX 4070 Ti Super GPUs typically use a cut-down AD103 chip, which is what RTX 4080s, the originals, are based on. In terms of specs, MSI's upcoming card doesn't deviate from the FE versions much. The core specs are all identical, so that's memory, the core count, all that stuff. Looks like NVIDIA is just rescuing defects in the process and shipping them as 4070 Ti Supers. We see this all the time, but one of the most noteworthy historical rescues was the 2060 KO. The 2060 KO was really interesting and is a mistake that NVIDIA will probably never make again. So the KO was EVGA's specific SKU, but that version of the die was also sold through MSI cards. The difference was on the 2060 KO EVGA model, they guaranteed that specific cut down version of the other die. And so what happened was, and we have a video on it, the 2060 KO in some workstation applications was massively better at those tasks than the original 2060, and that wasn't supposed to happen. So that was a cut down version of another die. It was supposed to have features disabled, and it was just supposed to be a 2060 in every capacity, but it wasn't. In gaming, it was about the same, to the best of my memory anyway. It was just those production applications from a mistake in NVIDIA's fusing process. Anyway, AD102 dies are significantly larger than their AD103 equivalents, so there's really no reason they'd use AD102 unless it's a downbin defect. This die size is approximately 608 millimeters squared for AD102, with AD103 at a significantly smaller area of 378.6. That's millimeters squared again. Now, this die size difference is meaningful. Large die areas nearer the reticle limit, like AD102, are more expensive to produce. This is partly due to actual material, machine time, but also partly due to the lower yields. Saving defects to convert them into lower spec parts is a way to recoup the cost. Now, MSI leaking to BenchLife isn't the only company to push the 4070 Ti supercards based on AD102. According to Video Cards, Colorful is also releasing a SKU based off of AD102. The publication notes that it features a 310 watt TDP that would make it 15 watts higher than MSI's variant, but this is a choice by the card maker, not by NVIDIA. One last NVIDIA story here, I think, unless more come through before the end of the episode and we have to shove them in. But NVIDIA recently saw a $500 billion reduction in its market cap. Let's just, you hear $500 billion, it's $500 billion, just to put it into perspective, it's like orders of magnitude more than a fathomable amount of money. You hear that kind of reduction in market capitalization, and you might think that the stock chart would look like the end times. Like it's the apocalypse, everything's over, it's doomed, but this is what it actually looked like. It's a blip. It's hardly noticeable. This drop happened over the course of 3 days, making it the largest short-time reduction in company value in stock market history. Not only would this spell the end for most companies, it is in fact 5 times what Dr. Evil held the world for ransom for in 1997.
We hold the world ransom for $100 billion.
Or 2.54 times if adjusted for inflation, and probably Dr. Evil would need to do that just to cover his costs, obviously. Now, this is what $500 billion drop in market cap looks like. Just again, we'll put it on the screen. The drop follows NVIDIA's meteoric rise to briefly become the world's most valuable company by market capitalization, which it held on June 18th with a market cap of $3.335 trillion. For some fun but mostly meaningless numbers, let's just do some math just to see what it looks like. So if you take that $3.335 trillion and you divide it by the head count, 29,600 employees, then the per value market cap share, if you want to, it doesn't work that way, but if you want to do it that way, that would be $113 million per employee. Or if you divided the annual revenue of $79.774 billion from April of this year reporting by the employee headcount, that average would dwindle down to a paltry $2.7 million per employee per year. It's just terrible. Where's the value in that? All right, next one. Hori is making Steam controllers and not those Steam controllers. The company's variant is more similar to the Steam Deck's controls in that it has the Steam Deck's menu buttons. It also has touch sensors on top of its sticks that allow users to activate gyro controls. Unlike the Steam Deck and the Steam controller, if you remember those, it lacks trackpads and rumble support. And while it has buttons on the back, like the Steam controller, there are only 2 compared to the Deck's 4. Instead, it moves 2 of those back buttons to the front, with one under the D-pad and the other under the right control stick. In terms of connectivity, it supports wireless over Bluetooth and a wired connection via USB-C, and the Steam controller from Hori will come in at 4 colors, black, white, neon yellow, and violet, and will retail for 7,890 Japanese yen, which amounts to about $50 US. Unfortunately, the Steam controllers are only targeting a Japan release for now. More frighteningly, though, it's set to launch on October 31st. Up next, previously, Microsoft revealed that it was working on a game streaming hardware device back in 2021, which the company has since shelved, but it's kind of re-emerged here. That device carried the codename Project Keystone, and aside from snippets of it sitting on a desk behind Xbox head Phil Spencer, we never really got a look at it. More recently, though, Windows Central was able to unearth some of the Keystone patent filings, which give some more illustrations of the cloud streaming device. Visually, Keystone looks a bit like a small record player. It features a square design with the circle on top and bottom that are reminiscent of the Xbox Series S's black circle. The front of the console appears to have an Xbox logo-shaped power button and a USB Type-A port. The drawing of the back of the console depicts what looks like an Ethernet port, HDMI, and power connectors alongside exhaust vents. The right side features what looks to be a controller pairing button, and finally the bottom of the console also looks like it has numerous circular vents. The documentation shows that the patent was filed on June 1st, 2022, and the date of the patent was established on December 26th, 2023. There's still a lot we don't know about the device, including its specs or OS. Spencer spoke to The Verge and mentioned back in November of 2022 that the device was being pushed back because of its price. According to the publication, Microsoft was originally targeting a $99 to $129 price point for the device. And speaking with Wall Street Journal back in October 22, Spencer didn't rule out the possibility of an Xbox streaming device and said, quote, "Will we do a streaming device at some point? I suspect we will, but I think it's years away." And those were kind of their last real comments on any of this, a couple years old now. From a functionality standpoint, Keystone would have occupied a similar space to Google's now defunct Stadia platform. It would be a competitor to NVIDIA's solution as well, formerly called Grid and now called GeForce Now, all of which are designed to make sure you own absolutely nothing and barely even the hardware that you're using to stream the games to. But unlike Google and Stadia, though, Microsoft remained in the game streaming space with its Xbox Cloud Gaming Service, which bundles with the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription. So Keystone ultimately didn't make it to market. There have been rumors about handheld development as well. Those haven't been publicly shown in any official capacity yet, but Microsoft is definitely playing around with different things. The concern we always have with the game streaming stuff is that it is the clearest path forward to making sure all of the games are purely licenses, and that's kind of where it's going already, even with Steam. However, the big difference with game streaming is you now start to strip away the hardware ownership as well. So it's not just the software, but it's also we'll provide all the hardware in our remote data centers, you just pay for that indefinitely, which is a concerning future for a lot of reasons. We've already gone that direction with productivity software like the Adobe Suite, and it's really not where I want to go with hardware. Arctic has released a new NVMe SSD cooler, so this isn't something we're going to go too in detail with, but it's called the M2 Pro. Talking about it because we saw Thermaltake's M.2 SSD coolers at Computex, where they used really tiny 20mm fans to basically compete in the same market. So Arctic says that the cooler is compatible with the PS5, meaning that it'll fit in that small chamber. It also makes some interesting claims for the performance. But as far as how it assembles, they say it uses a click-in mechanism for the SSD and the heatsink, and then it also has 2 of Arctic's TP3 thermal pads that allow it to contact on both sides of the SSD, which is particularly useful if it's a dual-sided SSD. Now, as far as their performance, Arctic claims that it measured a Samsung 990 Pro hitting a peak temperature during a write test of 90 degrees Celsius, and that was without a cooler, and then it claims that it went down to 55 degrees Celsius with the M2 Pro. We are currently way over capacity on testing, meaning we have way too many things in to do reviews on, so we don't plan to validate that claim. But that is what they state for the performance. All right, Minisforum is releasing a new mini PC called the UM890 Pro, which will be powered by AMD's refreshed Zen 4 Hawk Point processor. Specifically, it will use the Ryzen 9 8945HS CPU, which is an 8-core 16-thread part. Now, confusingly, Minisforum has conflicting information here, so they have this image on the page for the product that says it's Zen 3 architecture. Higher up on the page, they say Zen 4 architecture. And then AMD officially has the correct specs, of course, for the 8945HS, which is, in fact, Zen 4. Looks like a copy-paste error. They forgot to update the image text from a previous generation or something. In terms of ports, the box seemingly does a good job of cramming a bunch of hardware into a tiny space. It includes an audio jack as well, 2 USB 4 ports, 4 USB 3.2, DisplayPort 1.4, HDMI 2.1, Oculink, and 2 Ethernet ports. The UM890 Pro starts as a bare bones kit, $480. You'd bring your own storage and RAM for that, or it's $650 for the full SKU with 32 gigs of memory and a 1 terabyte SSD. Minisforum has been overall recovering pretty well. So when we first worked with the company, when it was still, I don't know how new it was, but it was at least new to us at the time with the liquid metal solution years ago. We did a review on that. The experience was that we felt they had very misleading marketing. The main selling point and feature wasn't even in the device, and that was it looked bad. I mean, it just really didn't look good for Minisforum. They have recovered in a massive way, and it looks like they're going the right direction. All right, Valve releases Steam game recording in beta. This is kind of similar in ways to Shadowplay or AMD Relive, where it is hardware agnostic here. It works on the Steam Deck as well, but it tries to complete some of the same functions that those do. Steam game recording can function in background recording mode, which captures continuously but can overwrite, and the other is active recording on key press. Steam game recording also features lightweight editing tools. It allows you to basically clip footage, save out an MP4, and then it also has sharing functionality, and it has timeline event markers. So these are kind of cool because if any of you have ever used one of the older model GoPros especially, there's always the problem where you collect a ton of footage and then it's kind of hard to scrub through and find the interesting points. So these markers are supposed to solve that, where they will, on a predefined game event programming, which are mostly unknown right now and are set as we understand it by developers, markers will drop, which will make it easier for players to find those events in the game. So Valve says that players can also drop their own markers. This would be useful to cut down useless capture, like, say, when you're camping waiting for something to happen. In terms of performance overhead, Valve says that it tries to, quote, minimize CPU usage of video encoding by using the dedicated video encoding hardware of your AMD or NVIDIA GPUs, and, quote, it's unclear if Intel is at a disadvantage. Its ARC GPUs have a robust media engine, but Valve wrote, quote, when run on systems without those graphics cards, seemingly referencing the prior AMD NVIDIA statement, the system CPU is used to create video recordings, which may cause a noticeable performance impact on those systems. In other Steam-related news, according to PC Games N, approximately $19 billion has been spent on unplayed Steam games. So there's a lot of extrapolations in this, but let's just go through it for interest. The publication explained that it came to this conclusion by, quote, out of all the registered Steam accounts in the world, only 10%, or about 73 million in Steam ID Finder's database, are public. Based on data from those accounts, we calculate that collectively there's around $1.9 billion worth of games that have been purchased and then never played even a single time. Multiply that by 10 to roughly account for all Steam profiles that are not public, and you arrive at $19 billion. A couple things here. First of all, extrapolating, multiplying it by 10 is a big extrapolation, but they're hoping that it's kind of linear. And then additionally, it's not clear if all of these games were calculated at MSRP or at their sales price. There's also a lot of assumption where there have been many times where Steam will distribute free games as part of a bundle, or the developer will do so rather. And either way, assuming the $19 billion number is right, $19 billion for unplayed games, to put that into terms that are actually fathomable, that would be almost the value of 17 NVIDIA employees. And that quip was the only reason that story was in this news episode. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net, or you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus to help us out directly. And we'll see you all next time.